In June 2009, a dying man conducted his final mission with military precision. 13 mystery drops with a purple bag, surveillance evasion, identity removal. Though terminal cancer ravaged his body, something else took him that night on Ross's Point Beach. His final act? Becoming Peter Bergman, a man who never existed until he ceased to exist. I'm Carol Ann. Welcome to the In-Between. I'm not gonna lie, this story hits a little close to home. June 15th, 2009, just about the exact time I was heading out to enjoy an evening out to celebrate my 40 years of life, Peter Bergman was wading into the waters of Sligo Bay to end his. While I was surrounded with family and friends, Peter was not. This was, presumably, how he decided was the best way he could leave this mortal plane. But why? Well, that is the question, isn't it? This case is very similar to the case of the Somerton man from Australia, if you guys are familiar with that one. He's the guy who was found dead on Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia in 1948. He had no ID, and coroners could not find an actual cause of death. That one has been an ongoing mystery for 77 years, but at least that one seems to be on the brink of being solved. This one, opened a mere 16 years ago, seems to get colder every year. But the case of Peter Bergman is so fascinating because it's a reverse missing 411. In a regular missing 411 case, someone goes missing with few or no clues, never to be seen again. This case is the opposite, in that Peter's not missing. We know exactly where he is. We just don't have any idea who he is. And this guy went to some extraordinary lengths to make sure no one would ever find out. Again, why? But before we get to the details, let me lay out some of the whats before we get to the whys. So here's the Reader's Digest version of events. Friday, June 12th, 2009, around 2:30 in the afternoon, a slender man, about 5'10", with gray hair, arrives at the Ulster bus depot in Derry, Northern Ireland. After asking another driver which is the bus going to Sligo, which is in County Sligo in the Republic of Ireland, he gets on the Sligo bus, which leaves Derry at 4 p.m. He arrives at the Sligo bus stop at 6:28 p.m., and gets off the bus carrying a black shoulder bag, kind of like a laptop bag, and a black sort of carry-all bag. I'm thinking by the looks of it, it's one of those quasi-fabric bags that you can get anywhere. He catches a cab and tells the driver to take him to an inexpensive hotel. The first one they try has no room at the inn, so the second try is the Sligo City Hotel on Key Street. Bingo! They have room. The man checks in, paying €65 per night in cash for a 3-night stay, and signs in with the name of Peter Bergman, giving his address as Vienna, Austria. The hotel clerk adds to his description that he has blue eyes, is somewhere in his late 50s or early 60s, and speaks with a German or Austrian accent. They assign him room 705, and Mr. Bergman goes to his room without talking to anyone else. The next day, at 10:49 a.m., Peter leaves the hotel and goes to the post office and buys 8 82-cent stamps and airmail stickers. The rest of the day, he made several trips in and out of the hotel. The next day, so Sunday, Peter grabs a taxi sometime between 11 and 11:30 and asks a taxi driver, who describes Peter as being rather chatty, "Hey, where would you go if you wanted a nice quiet beach to go swimming?" The driver says Ross's Point Beach, which is less than a 15-minute drive, so that's where they go. The taxi driver stops in the parking lot on the bluffs overlooking the beach. Peter gets out of the taxi, takes a look at the beach, seems satisfied, gets back into the cab, goes back to Sligo, and gets dropped off at the bus station. The rest of his day is spent making several more trips in and out of the hotel, still not really interacting with anyone else. Monday, June 15th, Peter checks out of the hotel at 1:06 p.m. and makes his way on foot to the Sligo bus station. He hangs out there for a while, grabs some lunch, and boards the 2:40 bus to Ross's Point, where he arrives sometime in the late afternoon. He hangs out at the beach all afternoon and evening, where he is seen by at least 11 different witnesses, the last one being at 11:50 p.m. At 6 a.m. the next morning, his dead body is found lying face down in the sand of Ross's Beach. Okay, that's the 100-mile-high view of the story. Let's zoom in a little closer. Tuesday morning, at a bright and shiny 6 a.m., Arthur Kinsella strolls the beach in the early morning sun. Not only is this good exercise for him, he's not getting any younger, but it also gives him a great excuse to hang out with his son, Brian. Brian is training for a triathlon, and Arthur is more than welcome to keep him company. As he walks the near section of the beach, which the locals call the first beach, he sees something ahead of him that looks like a mannequin. As he gets closer, his stomach drops when he realizes that it's not. He calls Brian over. Lying in front of them is clearly a dead body. The two decide to take a quiet moment to say a prayer for whomever this individual is, and then they call the Garda, or the Irish State Police. Considering the dead man has zero ID or any other way to identify who he is, the Garda do a pretty quick job of tracking him back to his hotel. And this is where the story really starts. The hotel staff, who had seen Peter come and go several times over the last few days, are able to confirm him as a guest. Okay, at least they have a place to start. Despite it being law to check the ID of anyone checking into a hotel in Ireland, the hotel staff did not ask Peter for ID. So all the police have is the name and address Peter provided. They run his name, address, and fingerprints through the computer and come up with a big fat 0. No such man with that name fitting that description is in any of their databases. And in the Vienna address he registered with is a big fake as well. And they can't find any record of him entering Northern Ireland. It's like his life only began when he boarded that bus in Derry heading to Sligo. Okay, now what? Well, the next step is to take a look at the CCTV footage for any clues. Now, I am not a fan of CCTV being everywhere, but if it weren't for the cameras both within the hotel and on the streets of Sligo, this story would never be a story. As the Garda officers comb through the hours of footage, a strange tale takes shape that raises more questions than it answers. Remember all of those trips that Peter took in and out of the hotel? Well, turns out that every time he leaves, which turns out to be 13 times in the less than 72 hours he spent there, he leaves with a smallish, nondescript purple plastic bag that always has something in it. And every time he returns, there's no purple bag. Now, whether that is the same purple bag used over and over again that he just tucked into his pocket when he came back, or whether it's a new bag each time, we don't know. So the police look at more footage to try and figure out where he's going and what he's doing with the purple bag. Finding Peter on CCTV while he's out and about in Sligo turns out to be pretty easy. However, the police discover that whenever Peter is dumping the bag, he's doing it out of sight of the cameras. Every time. He seemed to have no problems with being seen on CCTV, but went to great lengths to hide whatever he seemed to be disposing of. And the same seems to be true of any letters that he sent with the stamps that he bought. No sign of him putting anything in any mailboxes. So, we know he's making trip after trip to get rid of something that he most likely doesn't want anyone to see. Next step, search the trash cans. They search every trash can in the area and even search the local dump and come up with exactly nothing. All right, what else do they have? Well, When they combed the beach the morning Peter was found, they found a pile of neatly folded clothes that matched the description of what witnesses say they saw him wearing at the beach the day before. Mostly. On the pile were a black leather jacket, navy chino trousers, a black sleeveless Tommy Hilfiger sweater vest, black leather shoes, and dark socks. Missing was a light blue button-down shirt that he was seen wearing on the CCTV from the hotel and the bus stop. On his body was a waterproof watch, a navy t-shirt, striped swim trunks, and a pair of underwear worn over the swim trunks. His glasses, which he was seen wearing everywhere, are never found. All clothing tags have been cut off, and anything else that was identifiable about any of the clothes all amounted to dead ends. In his pants pockets were tissues, small bar of what looked to be hotel soap from a different hotel with the wrapper written in English, €149 in cash, and some aspirin. They tried tracing those things as well, but hit similar dead ends. Now what? Well, we have witnesses. And between the witnesses and the CCTV, we have a pretty good idea of what happened on Peter's last day on Earth. After making one last trip out of the hotel with his purple bag that morning, Peter set his hotel key on the desk at 1:06 p.m. and walks out onto Key Street carrying his purple bag, his shoulder bag, and his black carryall. But it's a different carryall than the one that he got off the bus with on Friday. He heads to the bus station on foot. By the time he gets there, he no longer has the black carryall bag. He buys a one-way ticket to Ross's Point, sits down in the small bus stop cafe, and orders a cappuccino and a sandwich. While eating his lunch, he takes some papers out of his pocket, makes some notes, and puts them back in his pocket. Just a bit later, he takes those papers out again, maybe his final to-do list, rips them up, and throws them in the garbage before boarding the 2:40 bus to Ross's Point. It's about a 20-minute bus ride, so he steps off that bus around 3 p.m. with his black shoulder bag and the purple bag right outside of Yates Country Hotel. No restaurants or cafes in the area remember serving him any food that day, but a number of people remember him walking around. Because most people, when they go to the beach, both their mood and their attire are usually pretty casual. Peter stuck out in people's memory because he was dressed far from casual. Business casual, maybe, but his dress pants, sweater vest, and leather jacket made him look more like he was there for a business meeting than a day at the beach. He is seen at 4 p.m. on the beach with a black shoulder bag, at 5 p.m. near the yacht club, sometime after 9 p.m. on the beach carrying something. He's seen by people at 9:30, 9:45, and 10:20. He's seen at 10:30 on a path near the beach carrying the purple plastic bag, and at 11 p.m. with the plastic bag. He's seen again right after 11 sitting on one of the benches overlooking the water, and at 11:10 standing on the beach. The last person to see Peter Bergman alive saw him at 11:50 walking along the edge of the water, fully dressed with the purple plastic bag. Sometime after that 11:50 sighting, Peter put the final stages of his plan into action. He got rid of the plastic bag and its contents, seemingly already having disposed of the black shoulder bag, neither of which was ever recovered. He took off his clothes and neatly folded them on the rocks near the shoreline, presumably with the intent to walk quietly into that dark night. So what happened to Peter Bergman? Well, we know what ultimately happened to him, but the question is why? And where was he before June 12th? There are a couple of theories rolling around. The first, most obvious one is that he decided he wants to leave this world and he's going to decide where and when. Okay, but why Sligo? Looks like a beautiful city, but it's certainly not one of Ireland's top destinations. And why Ross's Beach? The high tide that night was 12:25 a.m. It seems pretty clear that he knew this was just killing time until the tide started to go out again, so it would sweep him out with it. He put so much planning into this whole affair, but didn't put any research into where the tide would be the strongest and the most likely to sweep his body out to sea. If he had, he would have known that Ross's Beach is a pretty quiet inlet with not nearly the strong tidal currents found on other beaches. Seems a little unlikely. And just a side question on my part, would any of this even have happened if the hotel clerks had done what they were supposed to do and asked Peter for ID when he checked in? Another theory is that he was a spy on the run, disposing of state secrets as fast as he could. He certainly knew how to cover his tracks, stay under the radar, and stay out of camera view when it mattered. Witnesses from the beach say that he looked like he was dressed for a business meeting, not a day at the beach. Could he have been waiting to meet someone? No one saw Peter talking to anyone, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Maybe he met with someone and the meeting went south. Now, obviously, I don't have any idea how the spy game works, but it seems like I keep reading about this person or that person dying of a sudden heart attack. But if some enemy state, or maybe even his own government, was actually after him, maybe they just had to work with what they had. The ocean. And what about the purple bag? Some people believe that the use of the purple bag was a beacon yelling, "Hey, over here," like he's trying to leave a breadcrumb trail for someone to follow. Think about it. If you're trying to not be noticed by anyone while you're disposing of whatever you're disposing of, wouldn't you use a totally bland black bag? Why would you use this purple one that actually, as evidenced by our talking about it right now, does the opposite of helping you blend in and practically ensures you can be tracked? The last theory is that Peter was some kind of criminal trying to outrun his dark past, disposing of incriminating evidence along the way, but that he didn't run fast enough. So basically, all the same arguments for the spy theory, just different players. One interesting clue that could tie into both those last two theories is the statement from one of the hotel managers. At some point during his stay, housekeeping knocked on Peter's door, got no response, but couldn't get in. She called the manager, who also knocked, got no response, and let herself into the room to see Peter standing there. He was certainly startled, but also looked relieved to see it was her. Who else does he think is going to show up? And who did the letters go to? We have no hard evidence that he sent any letters, but those 8 stamps and airmail stickers were never found. If they were letters to family or friends letting them know, "Hey, I decided to go out on my own terms and I don't want you to try and find me," would you, as said family or friend, be okay with that? A lot of the discussion that surrounds Peter's case is whether or not someone has a right to disappear, even from family and friends. I do think you have the right to do whatever you want with your life. And this is only a hypothetical since we don't know that the letters like that were sent. But if they were, could you keep silent, knowing that not only are there most likely people that are carrying the heavy sadness of not knowing what happened to him, but that there are police departments, potentially around the world, that could be wasting resources for years to come to try and solve a mystery that doesn't need solving? Somebody had to have known this man. His autopsy report showed that he had 2 gold teeth and silver fillings. So he has a dental record somewhere. He had had at least 1 previous heart attack. So somewhere there is a hospital record with his name on it. He only had 1 kidney. That could be another hospital record. And most importantly, the autopsy showed he had late-stage prostate cancer that had spread to his organs and his bones. So the chances are pretty good that there is an oncology office somewhere wondering why their patients stopped coming to his appointments. The pathologist estimated Peter had maybe weeks to live and probably would have been in a lot of pain. Yet there's no trace of any drugs in his system, no chemo drugs, no painkillers of any kind. Maybe that's why he took a taxi to his hotel which was within easy walking distance. And maybe that's the same reason he walked back to the bus station on that fateful Monday. Maybe he knew that he was only going to have to endure the pain for just a little while longer. But this would also be the last few hours he would have to breathe the fresh air and feel the warm sun on his face. And maybe that's why he wasn't taking any drugs, not even the aspirin in his pocket. Maybe he wanted to have a clear head to carry out his final plans. Dermot and Paula Lahiff were in the car at the beach that evening watching the sunset and saw Peter walking in the water. Between the beauty of the sunlight and the oddity of seeing this man in dress clothes wading through the water, Paula captured the experience in her creative writing class the very next night. The Golden Man by Paula Lahiff. A middle-aged man was walking in the water, parallel to the beach. He appeared to be fully dressed in a black jacket with his trousers rolled up above his knees. He came around from the second beach, around the rocks, and plodded through the shallow, rippling waves. The man seemed to walk somewhat stooped, hands clasped behind his back. A man on a mission, perhaps? He kept walking, his feet throwing up water at each step through the shallows. And when he reached the golden sunbeam, he stopped and hesitated. Then took that next fateful step, and he too turned to gold, becoming part of this miracle of light. He stood there, a magnificent golden man at one with nature. So, he made his plan to leave this world with the smallest footprint he could possibly manage, walk out into the cold Atlantic, and let the water take him and wash him out with the receding tide. But have you ever heard the phrase, man plans, God laughs? Well, that very phrase just may have been the last thing to go through Peter's head before his last breath. Because the water did not take him that day. A heart attack did. After all that planning to end his time here on Earth in complete anonymity, all that time contemplating and studying the water that he had chosen to become his final resting place, some random conspiracy between his heart giving out and the waves bringing him right back to shore foils all of those plans. Heart attack, huh? Do we need to rethink that espionage theory? I'm sure in the end, he didn't care one way or the other whether he drowned or died of a heart attack. But I am fairly sure he did not intend to be buried in an unmarked grave in the Sligo City Cemetery, or to become immortal in the minds of millions of people. I pray that no one within the sound of my voice ever has to hear the words that they only have weeks to live. But if you did, what would you do? This episode really did hit me that this guy either A, has no one in his life that he wants to spend his last days with, or B, feels cutting those who care about him out of the journey is the right thing to do. If Peter does have family and friends out there, whether they know about his fate or not, my heart goes out to them that they may find peace. And if you have any information about this case, please contact the Sligo Garda station, which is their police, or Locate International. If you're just a glutton for punishment and enjoy a world with more questions than answers, then go watch this one. It'll leave you with that same unscratchable itch. Be careful out there, and I will see you here again on the In-Between.